Welcome to episode 7 of the Can I Tell You Something podcast. Today we have something special in store. We have our first guests on this show.
Yes, we do. We are so excited to introduce our very first guests, my mother, Ann, and my godmother, Jutta. We have a very exciting episode for you in store where we're going to learn a little bit about their friendship and what it means to them and what it means to me and I think our relationship as well. And hopefully there's some juicy little stories sprinkled in there.
And for anyone that is wondering, are we just interviewing a friendship? No, these are the fabulous women. Two of
fabulous
them.
Women.
This is what Marvel wished they achieved with the Avengers. They are absolutely wonderful. It's been a pleasure to learn the lore behind their friendship. And I feel like this is the perfect medium to share how much we love them and learn a bit more about what makes the fab women fab.
So fab.
Yeah.
So you might be wondering, what is a fabulous woman? So I'm going to let the two of them give a little background of what that means and how the two of them met.
If you or a loved one likes the Can I Tell You Something podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Can I Tell You Something podcast. That is Can I Tell You SMTH podcast.
Well, the Fabs came along after we met, so I think we'll start with how we met and then add the Fabs on top
The
of
true
that.
origin story.
The true
before
origin
the Fabs.
story, because we like to do things in order.
That's right,
Yeah.
as they should be done properly.
So go ahead. How did we meet?
My husband and I came to Tacoma in 1992. And I was desperate for friendship. I didn't know anybody in Tacoma. I was very lonely. And I went to church St. Pat's in Tacoma, and for some reason, I found there was a young adults group. And even though I was already beyond that
Age 30 limit.
Age 30 limit, yes, by 4 years. I went anyway. And it was a very new group. They just started. And one of the things, as it was going into fall, they decided they're going to have soup and sandwiches every time. And people were asked to bring something to eat. And one time I brought potato soup. And here we are. I don't even know what we talked about, this whole thing. Doesn't matter anymore. But as I was packing up my bowls and everything, this wonderful woman comes up to me and says, I really like that. What is that? Oh, she knew it was potato soup, of course. But I think you asked me for the recipe.
Probably, yeah.
And I said, oh, it's my mother's recipe. And then I knew. That's it. We're meant for each other.
Love at first sight, if you
Yes,
will.
yes. Yeah, she appreciated good food. She knew what goes in it, how to do it. And I said, what more can you ask for? And I don't know how it continued. We must have seen each other at Mass and, of course, at the meetings. And then I think we just started to, hey, let's do this or come over or whatever.
Well, knowing you, I don't remember this, but I'm sure this is how it went anyway. You're so welcoming. I bet you invited me over to your home. I just imagine that's
Probably.
how it happened. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I also remember your apartment at Stadium. I was fascinated because it was in one of the older buildings, and the apartments, which used to be much, much larger, were turned into smaller ones. And one of the features of the original features in Ann's apartment was there was in the kitchen, you could open a little door, and that's where the milkman would have put the milk bottles. And there was still direct access out into the hallway.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And then you bought the house shortly after.
Yes, and that
Yeah.
bought my first house at it must have been age 40, I guess. That was after. That was after a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But then so that's how we met, and we're close from the start. And some of the highlights of our friendship have been I was present at the birth of both of your children.
Yes.
So I felt I was a stand-in for your mom, is how I felt. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's how you felt. but I just felt I was there for you, representing your family. And I that's just what I felt.
I didn't
So-
think that at
Yeah.
all, not once. because my mother would have been the last person I would have wanted there.
Oh,
Really.
okay.
That's an American thing.
Okay.
The mother has to be there, or whatever. The husband has to cut the cord and all that. No, I wanted you there. I wanted you as my friend because I knew that you would just be everything I need. I knew you would be the support that I need. And I don't know if Anne has told you this story when she got rid of that volunteer. Oh,
That does sound familiar. I have been told this story a couple of times, but for those
That's
listening,
what-
let's hear it.
When Katarina was born, we were very, very scared because I couldn't feel her moving anymore. I went to the hospital. Anne came right away. And we did not breathe until we heard the heartbeat of that baby on the Doppler. And then the doctor said, yeah, well, your water's broken. You're going to have that baby today. And I said, I don't want that today. Not today. I'm not ready. She has to come natural, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, they took me in a room. And of course, Anne was there long before Greg came. And then a volunteer came in. And she had this very strange, inappropriate music. And I don't mean inappropriate as contents, just inappropriate. It just irritated me. And she had, do you remember that smudging or something?
Yes, yes.
And I just looked at her and I said,
The sage kind
the
of
sage,
thing.
oh, she needs to go. She could,
That was the last thing you needed.
she could have maybe brought some holy water. That would have been okay. I can deal with that, but don't smudge me. And then Anne told her in no uncertain terms, you need to leave. And I think you had to tell her a couple of times because she did not, I'm sure she wasn't used to somebody saying, go. And your mother didn't say, would you please leave now? She said, you need to go. And then finally she got it and she left.
No ifs, ands, or buts. in
That's
that
right.
room.
Yeah. There was no room for interpretation with that one. But I wanted you. I didn't want a substitute mother or substitute anything. I wanted you.
Well, I was there.
You
and
were
I was
there.
very
You were there.
grateful.
Yeah.
Grateful to be there at the birth of
And
both of
so
your
was I.
kids.
And you were holding Katarina and you were holding Max. It was just wonderful.
I think the sentiment you were getting at, not necessarily a true stand-in mother, but a presence that you couldn't have from Germany because you were here. And so I get the sense from your friendship that it's always been something more familial than just a run-of-the-mill friend, if that makes sense. And I like how you said you just knew from the start when you met. I've had that experience with very few people. And so when that feeling comes about with a friend, you know that you just don't want to lose them. That's right. And I've sensed that through my life, of course, I gained a friend and almost a mother figure in you because of your friendship. And I think that's really special how that comes down. And I know then in our relationship, you gained that as well. So
Yeah.
it's almost as if the fabulous women and more so just the two of you have a very, very large impact on the rest of your family just because of your friendship.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
very
it's-
special to
it's
us.
true.
That's why we wanted to do this episode and share this relationship because, you know, especially just being a young woman in my 20s, I found it so hard to make friends because I crave that deeper connection that sometimes people my age don't want. And I think that's probably because I've had it modeled in my life from you two. And that's really special for me.
For me, I remember the first time I went and had dinner with you. It was one of those dinners where there was that very welcoming family vibe. It felt like better than like a Thanksgiving thing. It just felt very comfortable being there. And I know beforehand I was, of course, a bit anxious. It's like I've never met any of these people. This is your second mother,
Yeah, it's like
more or
meeting
less.
the parents for a second time.
Yeah, and it was very easy to become very comfortable. And on that deeper, more meaningful connection bit, for me at least, I get really anxious in like the big party type environments, but at the same time, I really do crave social connection. And the dinner party type thing, that's my favorite thing in the world. And so not only did I gain a sense of family in Washington, and I don't have any family in Washington, I also gained like a social outlet that I had been struggling to find for a good chunk of time. So the found family bit, and you kind of just knowing right off the bat, I resonate with that personally. There was never it was very much like, like this is Tacoma family. Like, I don't know.
And it feels like that every time we go, and it doesn't have to just be a dinner party. It can be anything we do. It's like going home.
You are my Seattle children. That's what I always say, you know.
So I'm hearing that about Jutta. I'm not hearing about how you felt when you first came to Claire's parents' home.
What about the real first parents
That's a good question.
in Colorado?
No, when I first met your family and I first went to your house, everything I knew about your family was through your lens, your perspective.
All good things.
All good things. But there's so much unknown when you haven't actually put a face to anyone or you see someone in real life. And it was also at a time where I had only really been around my family and you socially. So I think that most of my anxiety around it all was centered around just like opening up that social space, because then it was more common for it to be you, me, and your family hanging out.
Right. Because, yeah, like we said, we did meet in COVID, and there was several months where it was just us. And I think there are anxieties there. But beyond COVID, meeting the family for the first time is so nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But I was very happy when it finally happened, because it felt like we could be a larger family from there.
It was so like, it was wonderful seeing all the parts that I love about you connected to the people that raised you. You can see a lot of those values just translating between the two.
Try as I must. I am my mother's daughter just as much as I am Jutta's. We are one and the same.
And so that was another really kind of funny thing to me when I met you, was seeing how similar your relationship with Katerina was to you and your mother. I mean, it was the spitting image. It was two different fonts, but the same text. And I really like seeing that. It makes it, it's just a cool thing to be a part of. And I'm happy to have been a part of it. But back to the Fab women.
Yeah, so
This is not about me. This is about them. Let's be honest.
You're so brave. We got your backstory, but we hinted that there are more, and it's a bigger operation, if you will. So if you would be so kind as to introduce the idea of the Fabulous Women.
Sure. So I have a dear friend who I've known even longer than your Aunt Jutta. So her name is Doreen, and she and I met when we were 10 years old in grade school, and happened to be parochial school. You're going to see church kind of figures into this story, not that we intended it to. But anyway, we were friends over the years through junior high, high school. We went to different schools, but we maintained a friendship because there was a kindred child spirit there, I guess, between Doreen and I. And so Doreen moved out from, Doreen and I are both from Colorado, and she moved out for a job, and I followed her when I was in my 20s. So we had that friendship already going. Then I met Jutta in the way that she explained. And so then Doreen and Jutta met each other. And then through church, you brought two more of the Fabs in. One's Johanna, who's German, like you, and one is Romina, who's Italian. So we have a very international flavor going.
How cultured you are.
Yes, we are very cultured, but there's still some sensibility that we all share and recognize in each other. And I know you know Doreen pretty well because she's one of your godmothers too. But I know you don't know Romina and Johanna as well. But if you spent time with them, you would feel the same that you're with us or Doreen.
I don't know them as well as I'd like to, but I do feel a similar and a familiar sense every time I'm with them. And I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's a motherly feeling that is just so comfortable and welcoming. And you don't feel that with a lot of people, to be quite frank. And I really enjoy being around all of you. A more specific question I have, I'm not sure if you have the answer. Where does the name Fabulous Women come from?
I do have an answer.
Well,
Thank goodness.
So when we all turned 50, I had moved back to Colorado, married your dad, and you had been born. And Doreen was still in Washington. Anyway, we turned 50 and we decided, let's celebrate together. So I said, why don't you all come out to Colorado? I decided to make a brochure to tell the Fabs.
We will insert a photo of said brochure.
Yes,
I know it exists out there.
So we didn't have a name then. And so I put this brochure together. So several years ago, or before we turned 50, on Saturday Night Live, there was a sketch that Steve Martin did. I think it was Steve Martin. And it was, "You look fabulous." And they just inserted, and that was the punchline. You had to be there. It was funny the way they delivered it in that time. Anyway, that I just thought that word fit us. So on the brochure, I just wrote "The Fabulous Women," and that's how it.
And the rest is
there.
history.
And now it's turned into the Fabs because we're
you're so hip and with it.
Hip. Yeah. So that's how it came about. So it's really only been 15 years or so that we're called that. And I've gotten to know Romina and Johanna better since we turned 50 and we became the Fabs, because I knew them somewhat when I lived in Tacoma. But and now we're about to celebrate our 65th. Jutta and I have already turned 65, so has Doreen, but two of them won't till December. And we're all going to Steamboat Springs in Colorado for our 65th. So it took us 15 years to do this again.
So that's something I wanted to bring up. At one point in time, you all lived in the same area in Tacoma, Washington, not far from here in Seattle, if you are not local. And then you moved. And one question that came to mind for your relationship specifically, and then we can branch out, is why did you stay in contact in the way that you did? Because it was through such a long period of time. And for me, I think it's hard to conceptualize having a friend as long as you two have been, because I know when I moved from Colorado to here, I lost contact with pretty much everyone and started anew. So why do you think that your relationship still stands? Because it feels just as strong, if not stronger, than it was 30 years ago.
And I'll speak first because I know you've your opinion or your viewpoint on that. But for me, I'm an introvert, and I have two close women friends in my life. Really close.
You have three?
Well,
I would say.
You're my daughter, not my friend. Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that one.
So Doreen, I already knew, and then Jutta, we just solidified immediately. So I had the two friends, and I knew that's all I needed. That's all I needed. Between the two, they meet very different needs, but and then I am the godparent to both Jutta's children, and so that's a connection. That's a spiritual connection. So when I moved back to Colorado to marry your dad, it never occurred to me that I wouldn't continue the friendship. It was just a given, just a complete given. And I thought at the time, well, I'll just return once a year, or you can come visit me. And it has happened that way. So it was just always with me. And that's just the way it is. And it's still true today. When I moved back to Colorado, it's been 25 years or so, I never developed a third friendship with another person. I didn't need it, nor the people I met. They're fine acquaintances, but none of them had the background that Jutta has. And so I don't need anything more. I'm content with it. So that's my long answer. But you've told me how you felt when you learned I was leaving.
Yeah, I kissed her goodbye and I thought I'll never see her again. And I don't think that was because of any indication you gave me. I just thought, well, Ann's going to start a completely new life. She's going to she's going to marry this man, and then she's going to have her family, and you already had your parents there. And Danny, no, I don't know. Anyway, it was just her real family was there. And I was very, very, very sad. And I did not even take the fact that you're the godmother as a guarantee. And so when this continues, I was just blown away. I'm so grateful. And it's just like you said, you are just the best. You are. And I've been telling you things that I couldn't tell anybody else. And I am always so impressed with how you do things. I'm not an introvert, so which is probably good in this case. But I'm always I just admire you.
Well, that goes very much both ways.
But I did not, unlike you, I did not think this would last. So I am just deeply grateful. And I really think, as you all know me, I don't say, this is awesome or divine intervention or anything like that very often. But I really think that our friendship was meant to be.
I agree.
Or to speak with that insufferable.
Yeah.
You know what? Preordained. I don't know who's listening. There might be some people listening who might hold that against me.
We won't give them your location.
But they know me, believe me.
We'll defend your honor in the internet comments.
I just think it's wonderful. And we have, remember when we were younger, we were always joking, we'll go to the convent.
Yes. Yeah, half joking that we could, just join the nunnery. And in fact, Jutta just came to visit in Colorado, and we did go to a convent.
Yes, we did. It wouldn't be my choice because it's too hot. It was 105.
Yeah.
No AC.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's wherever a convent might be located, it's still
whoever
a possibility.
would take us.
Yeah. Whoever will take us.
I don't think there are too many.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, at what point from saying goodbye to Mrs. Cronin did you realize that friendship was solidified and it was something that would continue with you through time?
I think one point was when we had your going away party at Doreen's. There were several, I don't know how many women were there, but quite a few of your friends. And Claire, your mom, wrote something about each one of them. And once I noticed, okay, she's going in order from least important to the highest. I thought, oh my goodness, I hope I'm not next. I don't want to be next. There were about 10. There were 10. Oh, I cannot be number 5 or something. I think I was number 9. I just knew then. And then, of course, when we went to your wedding,
We got married in Colorado.
yeah, I flew with your friend Cora.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so we went out there. And then I just knew this is not going to be over anytime soon.
And it sure hasn't.
No, it
Yeah.
hasn't.
Yeah.
It hasn't. And I don't remember, one of you said it seems almost stronger than when we met. And I would agree with that.
I think so too. I was thinking about how you said that the friendship almost felt meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about how that ties into my life and now your life. I wouldn't have moved to Seattle, most likely, if you didn't follow Doreen, and then if there wasn't something for me to come to. And now I have an entirely new life that I could have never imagined here. And I think that's so beautiful, because that's something you could have never known when you became friends, that it would impact a child you didn't even know you'd have. And it's
And
just such.
it affects Brendan's life
Yeah.
too,
Exactly.
because he came out to Seattle from going to school elsewhere. So isn't it amazing how connected
Mm-hmm.
certain relationships are and how they can alter your life?
Yeah. It was, in that decision to transfer to the UW, one of the important things that I was considering was, would I feel comfortable in whatever new environment I was in? And would I feel like I had a place? Would I feel at home? And the knowing that you were within an hour away, and over an hour if there's traffic, but knowing that there was that family type connection so close, and then you being in the city as well, I knew that worst comes to worst, I still have some pretty amazing people that are around me. The other choices I had with where I was considering would have been the Midwest, it would have been Georgia.
We don't know anyone there.
Southern California. So to be able to see Seattle, love the city itself, and then meet you, and then be able to start a relationship with your family, it made that decision so much easier when it came time to fill out an application and to submit it. And it made it something when I was accepted, I was very proud in that moment, and it felt like a lot of things were falling in place for me. Because you don't transfer unless you want to change, and I did, and I'm incredibly grateful to have been able to do that.
And I think, well, first of all, thank you. That's beautiful to hear. But I think that our relationship with you will sustain independence. Let's say if anything happened between Claire and you said, Claire said, goodbye, Brendan, take your dog and leave.
Then Rue behind.
Yeah, well, you can take her too, if you ask me. But I think we have a solid foundation too, and we like you for yourself, and we're grateful to Claire for bringing him in.
I'm just such a blessing to your life. I know it.
Well, we cannot have these overarching statements. We have to be a little bit more specific. Yes.
But for your listeners about relationships, no, I didn't meet Jutta till we were in our early 30s, and you two are much younger than that. That it can happen at any time. You just have to be open to it. But when you see it, you know it.
Yes.
And so,
like you said, Claire,
to act on that. And then it affects my daughter and her boyfriend. It's just, I just find it really interesting how connected it all is.
I do too. And I remember when I was first leaving to go to college, and there was some painful goodbyes and just some issues surrounding that. And I had a sense of doom when I left. And you told me, you don't know it yet, but it will work out. And I don't think that you can fully understand that until it happens. And you need so much time behind you so that you can be confident that you're going to land on your feet. And obviously, yes, I am young and I have hopefully quite a few years ahead of me, but your relationship, I think, is proof of that there's, no matter how old or young you are, there is always time and hope to meet someone who is the right person for you at that time.
And when you started school, you hadn't even met Brendan yet.
I hadn't.
Yeah. So, and then things did work out ironically through COVID, and you just have to trust that when you want things, they'll come your way. You just don't know when or how.
I think that when we talk about that idea of you have to be open to it, you have to be patient. I think that when people often chalk up things to, oh, everything happens for a reason, there's this passive approach to it where it's like, if I just sit back, throw my hands up, things will come to me. But I think that, when you're saying that things will work out, you just can't see it yet, it's much more of a statement of you have to trust who you are as a person. And that's what's going to continue to move you forward through life, because you can't control the things that happen around you. You can control some things. You can choose to be kind. You can choose to reach out to certain people, but there are a lot of things that couldn't even control in my wildest dreams. So knowing that within oneself, there is that drive to find meaning and find connection, and that's the most important bit. For me, it makes me feel more at ease, because it feels not like anything is out of my hands, but it feels like I have some control over it because it comes from within. So, yeah.
And I think for those listening who are struggling with finding friends or loneliness or really any issue in general, hearing that it doesn't matter how old you are to still find a friend to play with you on the playground. There is someone out there for you. You just have to be open enough to trust that.
You have to be open, but I have never actively sought out a friendship. I have never approached anybody. As a matter of fact, when I met Johanna, I had something to do at the church, and one of the secretaries said, "Are you German? Do you know Johanna Needham?" I said, "Why should I know her?" "Well, she's German." I said, "So?"
Don't you all know one another?
"Well, you might want to meet her." I said, "No, I don't." Only because she's German, I don't want to meet her. Who knows what she's like? Anyway, but then I met her unbeknownst to me, because Max was 18 months and I was in the back of the church because he was probably talking or wanted to walk. And there's this young woman with a little girl, and lo and behold, they're speaking German. And I said, "Are you Johanna?" And she said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Oh, good." And that was that. So Max is 28 now. So you know how long that has been going on. But you cannot force it, but you can be open to it. And you have to give yourself some credit for trying. You have to allow yourself the fact that you might approach somebody and say, "Oh, let's go for coffee. And sure, I'll call you." And nothing ever happens. That's just part of the game. That happens. Or it's very painful when people don't reply to you, especially in the beginning, because you doubt yourself. But 99% of the time, it's not you. It's whatever issue they have, whether it's something as simple as no time and they cannot say whatever, but 99% it has nothing to do with you. And I would just encourage everybody, just be open and reach out and don't give up, because they can, if the first time it doesn't work, well, then there's somebody else. There's somebody there. And don't see it as a reflection of your self-worth or your lovability or whatever. Just say, okay, this one didn't work out. We'll move on to the next one. That's all.
I think personally that's something I have struggled with and continue to struggle with when meeting new people. And sometimes you feel like, oh, this is going to be the greatest new friendship I have, and it fizzles out or something goes wrong. Or like you said, sometimes time is a factor, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. And it is so important to remind yourself, sometimes it's you, but most of the time
it's not.
It isn't. And I think in modern days, when we're all so chronically online and feeling just perceived all the time, and you always have to be on, it's difficult to just release that and know that it's okay.
It's very easy to get idealistic. It's it's like when you first meet someone that you have a crush on, you like, your brain thinks all the things that aren't actually happening are happening.
Right. That happens with me with friends too.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, did I say that wrong? Are they gonna go home and think this? Blah 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 blah.
And they're thinking the same thing. They're too busy thinking about that. So
I think that the most reassuring thing to me is like how chronically unaware everyone tends to be about other people's stuff. And I didn't realize truly the extent to which I was unaware of other people's stuff until I started looking around at other people instead of focusing just in on myself. And you see all sorts of little things that people do where if it would have been me in their position, I would have, my heart would have started racing. I, would have been very embarrassed, dropping various things, not reading a sign, and then heading down the everything in public is just on full display. And the smallest little things that can sometimes make you feel like an idiot, there are a lot of other people that are doing the exact same thing. And that was never more true than when I learned about Norman doors, which I've probably shared this to some extent with you all.
You will find any excuse to get a Norman door.
I will throw a Norman door into any conversation if I can, but it's a door that people will walk up, approach, and pull the wrong way or push the wrong way. And so they have to do the second action to actually open the door. I mean, there's only two ways to open a door. You either push or pull. And there's this idea that if you have to have a sign that says push or pull, the door is not designed right. It's very comforting seeing other people mess up in front of you, because then it makes you realize that it's okay to mess up and do things wrong, because that is the norm. To do things right is the exception. So
other than we would view, I'm going to speak for us.
Yes, please do.
That if, because this is a long-term relationship now versus a new relationship with the door and the people, we would watch the people. Well, we would just have different thoughts. Mm-hmm. We would say, who created this damn door? There's something wrong here. Yeah. We would just, but that's because we have a longer term relationship.
I would also say that wouldn't happen to us.
It simply would not.
It wouldn't.
I had it happen recently, and I thought of that.
Yeah.
But that was the first time in years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it didn't happen.
You never know when one of those doors will sneak up on you and challenge you.
Yeah.
I did want to comment quickly on the idea of comfort in friendship, and the Norman door could be a metaphor for any embarrassing hardship that you might have to deal with in front of other people. But sometimes when you're around the right people, it just doesn't matter, and you can laugh it off. And I think that's a really important feeling for me, because comfort in a friendship, both in myself, how I perceive myself, and then comfort with how I feel around others, is something I have to have, where the relationship just doesn't feel right for me. And I obviously sense that with you two. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, you're introverted. I am your daughter. I am also very introverted. And I don't know, I think it's almost a standard I have for friendships. And I'm wondering what you think about that. Because you know me and how I perceive relationships and other people. And there are just some things that I can't handle. And I need to be in a safe and loving environment so that I don't pull the door wrong.
Yeah, this friendship has very much been a model for how I think about you and your friendships, because you care so much more about the quality of a friendship than the quantity. And I've met a lot of people that care about the quantity. And those people, it's nothing against them. There are some people that naturally like to have a lot of different friends. But to me, at least, there's a level of, that's not the kind of relationship I crave. And I can very much tell that's not the type of relationship you crave. You don't like the superficial. You don't like the small talk. And so seeing this friendship and like the conversations that you have with your parents, when we go down to Tacoma, the way that you talk, when we're on the back porch late at night, that to me, when you have those moments where you doubt the quality of your connections, I think about those moments, and I think about whether the social connection that you are reflecting on, if it even compares to it. Because oftentimes I think it's easy for you to feel upset about a social interaction because it lacks that quality that you desire. But oftentimes that happens in environments where a quality social interaction, a deep connection, can't really be facilitated. So it's just a model to understand what it takes for you to feel heard and to feel like you belong in a social place. And yeah, it's always insightful seeing where you came from, who raised you.
I think the older I get, and we've talked about this a lot, the more you realize that you're just your mom. You're just a carbon copy of those who come before you. And I joke a lot about this with your daughter, Katerina. It's just, there are just these little things that you'll do. That, oh, yeah, my mom would do that. Or, that's so Ann. That is so Jutta. And it's, I don't know, it's almost heartwarming to me, sometimes a little frustrating, because you so badly want to be your own person. And then...
But you are, Claire, you are your own person, because you just pick and maybe almost assimilate to what you like. The things that you don't like, you won't do.
I only cherry pick the best
That's
qualities
right.
of
And
you.
that's what you should do. Absolutely. And to your point, Brendan, that you think, or that you think Claire thinks there has to be a certain depth to everything, that doesn't. I always say, well, not always, but I've said to Katarina, just like you would diversify your portfolio, that's what you do with your friends. You don't have to be you cannot and shouldn't be and don't want to be with everybody like Ann and I are. There are some people, it's good enough you go out for a cup of coffee, or you go, whatever you do, walk your dogs, or, these little things that are very important in the moment, because they will fill a need in you. But it's not the end of the world. But then you have a few good ones. And those are the ones that don't go. The other ones, they come and go. It's like money. It comes, it goes, and then there's something else will come. It all goes back to trust who you are, because you are good. you're good enough, you will be a good friend to the ones that chooses you and that you choose. That's it.
Hey,
Can I tell you something?
sure.
Is a podcast that you can listen to on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube. And if you want to check out our social media, go to TikTok or Instagram or Threads.
Well, by golly, Jim Willikers, I think I will.
But I do want to add this little lighthearted twist because, I mean, we've talked about some pretty intense, heavy things. I mean, lifetime friendships and like the confronting being lonely and being patient through loneliness and being introspective, because the introspective bit is what we're about to do now. When we assess both of your personalities with zero scientific information, which puts it on par with the Myers-Briggs personality test we have discovered. And I do have a couple questions for your mom. As an HR professional, I'm curious, have you ever encountered the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator in your work?
Yes, and I don't like it. So I encountered it first when I went to graduate school at Seattle U, and
That's where I encountered it.
yes, but it made sense. But I think in the business world, it's just a tool that people can use to start conversations, and they're grateful for a tool that seems to be sanctioned by whomever. It could be any tool. It could be any personality tool. It's just at a certain place in time, Myers-Briggs did it. There are plenty of others. I'm not going to plug them for your vast listening audience, but they're just conversation starters. There's Strength Finders was one. You gave me that. They all pretty much tell you the same thing in different words. But I really don't like it when it's used for ill, and I can see that happening in the workplace too. So I haven't used them. I've not promoted them in my area, but a lot of people do. So I don't want to say it's a bunch of hooey. It's not, but don't take it too seriously.
Well, you know what isn't a bunch of hooey?
Is the cube assessment. Let me get our paper.
For our very dedicated listeners, you know that last week's episode went into our disdain for Myers-Briggs, but also our solution for Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
And we have created our own personality test that instead of the 93 questions asked by Myers-Briggs, we have 6 for you.
Just starting from the top, do either of you enjoy Marvel movies or superhero movies in general?
No.
Never watched a Marvel movie and never will.
I told you, I am just my mother.
Where do you keep your butter? On the counter or the fridge?
Butter?
Butter.
Counter.
Counter butter. Given the choice between the two, do you prefer curtains or blinds?
Curtains.
I have to think about this one.
We found some problems with this one too. It's in a perfect world if they both block out the same amount of light or people or whatever. What's your gut reaction?
Blinds.
Blinds. Do you or have you ever thought about enjoying the sport of ultimate frisbee?
Hell no. And what is it?
See,
Thank you,
this is
Ann.
why this assessment works
Thank you,
perfectly. Is people get their answer pretty quickly.
Last question. When in a restaurant and you get an order, you order something and you receive it incorrectly, will you send the food back or will you eat it and say nothing?
It depends. If I order salmon, for example, and I get octopus, Couldn't eat that.
You're sending it back.
Yes, but if I ordered a steak, and that's a bad example too, because I don't like steak, but it depends. My choice the original order, I might like just as much what comes my way.
Mm-hmm.
It's very situational based.
Yeah, I just didn't pick it that time.
Same with me too. It depends on how hungry I am.
Mhm.
If the second item will satisfy me just as well.
Yeah.
But if it wouldn't, I would send it back. It's not being afraid to send it back.
Yeah.
It's just more how hungry am I?
I think that this question, and we might need to tweak the verbiage as we continue to develop iterations of this, is meant to kind of gauge if you receive something that really isn't to your liking or is really different from what you asked for, what would it take for you to be willing to send it back? And for me, at least personally, it would take a lot, mostly because I would say that I'd be satisfied with almost anything that's presented to me. But then the other thing too is I wouldn't send it back because I just don't feel comfortable advocating for myself in that way.
The example I gave on last week's episode was when we were at that Mexican restaurant in Colorado, and I got enchiladas and I ordered no rice because I'm very allergic to rice, and I got rice on top of it, and I didn't send it back because it's a confidence thing, it's an embarrassment. So I think it is a situational question, but there's also I don't think there's anything that would happen that I would be able to send the food back. But what I'm getting from both of you is you would send the food back.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think you need to tell the story about the knife.
Please.
It's a restaurant. It's not food, but it's a restaurant story.
You tell it.
So I wasn't there. It did, but it shows her confidence in herself.
We were out to dinner with Nate and Rhonda and Chris and Greg and Rhonda's dad. And we're going to this place in Tacoma where I already thought, why are we here? And then we get there and there was nothing on the table. We were shown to our table and the waitress comes with one thin little paper napkin and a fork.
It was not enough.
Of course not. And I said, can I have a knife, please? And she said, with your food. I couldn't believe it. What kind of service is that? That is not, I don't care if I only ask for soup, I want a knife and a fork in my place setting.
Just in case. What if you want to nibble off of someone else's plate?
That's right.
You always have to be prepared.
So this is a person who knows what they want at most times and is very willing to ask for it. Not even ask, sometimes demand. And
if the situation calls for it.
It's very telling about her personality. And I find it pretty amusing. And so we've been joking
I have to tell
about
you, just because we can do that now after all these years, I was telling Ann, and of course I'm righteously indignated, I'm expecting nothing but, oh my goodness, how could they do that? That is awful. What bad service. What do I get? Well, did you need it? I couldn't believe it. I said, the very knife that was not on my table is now in my bag. There it is. And it's been twisted more than once.
Ladies and gentlemen, in case you have not met a German woman in real life, that was all you need to know.
Yes.
So that concludes the cube test. Would you be so kind as to give them their results?
I have two answers. One, each of which, by the way, the answers for these, they're not elaborate. It's one word. That's all you get. That's the depth. You can ask me if you switched up a certain answer, what you might get. That might be a bit interesting. But without further adu, who would like their fortune read first?
Give it to Ann. She's younger.
Weren't we identical?
You said blinds and not curtains.
Okay, That's,
It
that
does
changes
shift
everything.
things. Yeah, the
Okay.
gravity changes.
Before we reveal this, I strongly agree with one of them and strongly disagree with another.
So the first identity that's been assigned for you was the gamer.
I don't even know what that means.
I would like to preface that because there are 6 questions, there are 64 possible personalities. So Myers-Briggs only has 16. So there were some certain outcomes that we didn't quite know what to put a name to it. And I think the gamer was supposed to be a very specific human being that I do not think represents you. A gamer is more so typically a man who stays inside for most of his existence and, you know, doesn't perceive much of the world. And I think that is very opposite of you. So definitely a faulty
Yes,
exam.
I actually would propose a switch between two because I think that there's one that's a bit closer. Also, when you name 64 things to define people's explicit personalities, at a certain point we're just doing like
One of them was tumbleweed.
yeah, one's tumbleweed. We have the mollusk and the crustacean, like just ridiculous names.
Did you come up with that?
The
With those names?
Yes, we did no research
Mm-hmm.
and just assign names to things. But I do want to offer a name switch. If we change the food situation between sending it back or eating it, that's the difference between gamer and puzzler.
Puzzler. That sounds very much like you.
It's not just people who like puzzles, like it's people who like figuring things out, solving
That's you.
things.
Solving problems.
Exactly.
That's
Which is
Ann.
very similar to you. You were the investigator.
I was the investigator on
Mhm.
this one. Mrs. Mead, your fortune reads that you are the particular. You are specific. You know what you want. No BS about it. You are the particular.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's spot on.
We can let that stand.
Yes, it will stand.
It will stand.
The true science of the cube reveals itself. I was the tasteful, which I would have to agree with, of course.
I mean, there might be some bias.
with
Yeah.
the one who was behind it because I knew exactly what my answers would lead to.
What was yours, Brendan?
The investigator.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I would say that's correct.
And to be honest, I didn't think about myself and my answers when I was doing it, but I'm sure that a lot of my internal biases led to calling myself an investigator on this one.
And I think Puzzler was actually very accurate because I was surprised when you said you'd send food back. Because I've never seen you do that.
Well, because
Well,
it wasn't necessary.
It wasn't necessary.
Okay.
You just had such remarkable service.
Most of us do get what we order in life and at the restaurant.
So there's something we like to do at the end of episodes is just get a little debrief in to see what we learned or what we're feeling after our chats. And although the cube was fun, it was, I don't think, very insightful. I think the beginning of the episode was a lot more interesting and entertaining for me. And I just wanted to thank you both for being our very first guests on the podcast. I think it's very fitting for you two to be the ones here. I think I tend to forget how alike I am to you because we do live so far apart now. And it's really fun for me to hear old stories, but in a new way, to just remind myself that even though there are times of loneliness, I am not alone. I do have such quality relationships in my life. And I'm very grateful to you as my mom, but also to your friendship because it's like we explored, it's done a lot for my life. And I think that's what I want to leave you and our viewers with.
Well, thank you for that. And this is the first time I'm hearing how the value of our friendship has impacted you, and you also, Brendan. So that's I know the impact our friendship has had on me. And yes, and that was enough. But to learn that it's had a positive impact on you as well is just amazes me, and it brings me happiness. And that's one piece, an important piece of life that I want to share with you, is that stability during ups and downs, because life will go up and down and sideways and all. But when there's a stability of some people in your life, that's all you need to hang on to. So I'm glad that you see that and you feel that. I'm very grateful to learn that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, of course. When you said that you feel so much like your mother's daughter, I remember the very first time I was here. We came last year, I don't remember, whenever after you moved in here, and we had a wonderful afternoon here, Greg and I. And when I came home and I talked to your mom, I said, she is your daughter to the T. Everything, your graciousness, you are a wonderful hostess. You made everything beautiful in here for us, and you really made us feel welcome. And I really appreciate that. And I know you have it from Ann. And just the fact that we are here, you said we are your first guests. It's always amazing to me when young people seek me out. And I'm just very grateful for that. And then I think we've done something right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so,
and yes.
and I'm very happy that you're here, Katharina.
It's hard to follow that up. I think that what I'm most happy with the discussion, the chat that we had, I mean, the whole reason that we wanted to do this in the first place is we wanted to find a way to capture the conversations we would have with each other naturally. And it's been quite an exploration trying to figure out what recreates that. But I think that what I didn't realize until we started recording this is that it does more than just capture the conversations that we naturally have. It creates an environment to have new conversations that we wouldn't have to begin with. It doesn't show up naturally, reflecting on a friendship in a structured environment, reflecting on relationships. And there's an incredible beauty to that. And I feel very privileged to have shared that with you all. It makes this first guest experience all the more sweet. So thank you all for joining us.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you to all of our very dedicated fans out there. We hope you enjoyed episode 7 of the Can I Tell You Something podcast. We will be back next week for something special, I'm sure. But until then, bye.
Bye.